Now, follow that. But no pressure. It's not a problem. And if I had realised the pickle you'd find yourself in, Fiona, the last couple of days, and I got you earlier, I would have advised you to avoid the fire. Don't bother giving in to the children's request for a cat, a dog, 16 goldfish. I stood my ground, and my life was complicated enough without all of those. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's lovely to be here. I'm sort of conscious as well that I'm talking to people who are in the middle of this journey, who are coping, who are managing, who are adapting, who are skilled and determined. So there's a little bit of an irony of me talking to you, because between you, you could have the guts of 100 years experience between you, you know. So I'm conscious of that. A bit like Fiona, the other bit of advice I'd say, don't wait until you're a certain age. I'm halfway through a PhD on support needs for young families dealing with a cancer diagnosis. You will see from my slides there are no arrows, nothing moves, so that's the equivalent of my date of birth up there. And there's another irony in that, is that I have a child who is, well, I have 3 actually, grown up now, all out of my wallet, which is an extraordinary thing you think will never happen. And one of them is a software engineer, which is bizarre, I think, in the extreme. I don't actually know what she does every day, but she does it. And let me tell you, she's paid extraordinarily well. But anyway, I deal with my resentment daily. So I want to talk just a little bit about, oh, I can see it there, just a little bit about the challenge of managing illness. And, oh yeah, I can press this, can't I? So it's just thoughts, just a few very simple thoughts and ideas, okay? And because what we know, and the reason you're here, is that breast cancer is the most common cancer for women now worldwide. And a cancer diagnosis sets off, if you like, a time of physical challenge, surgeries and treatments, there's emotional fallout, you know, it sets off all kinds of feelings and anxieties. Interpersonal, it reverberates across the family, across relationships, friendship circles, networks. And there are practical challenges, practical, financial, how do I get from A to B? And newer treatments, which Fiona has alluded to, and I know you've heard her talk about it this morning, and earlier diagnosis means improved survival rate, which is great. But the disruption and the need to adapt and accommodate now goes on for over an extended period. So you really need to have your toolkit in place and well oiled up if you can. So developing and cultivating coping strategies is really, really important for quality of life and well-being. Okay? So resilience is kind of a buzzword we hear a lot about. And I want to just unpick a little bit around that, only little bits, only very quickly. And the thing that sort of preoccupies me a little bit at work is something about what are the protective factors, what are the factors that support quality of life and enhances our resilience, okay? So I'm going to I went into the literature looking at definitions of resilience, and some of them I like, but some of them I don't actually. I don't think they're particularly helpful. But here's a sample, right? So resilience has been defined variously as in all kinds of ways. One definition talks about the ability to recover strength, spirits, and humour. Another one talks about ability to bounce back and recover from stress. Another one talks about the ability to adapt in the face of adversity. I'm closer to the last one. The business about bounce back and recover from stress, I don't like that one. It feeds some sort of notion that if I can just get my act together, I'll be back to where I was. That's nonsense, complete nonsense. You're here. and you're older and wiser. You have learned, you have managed, you've tried things out. So you are much more along the resilience trajectory. So I think the key point is that people use and develop resources and skills to manage stressors. It's about adaptation, right? So it's dynamic, it's changing. We learn, we can manage, we have to try things out. It's a whole journey in itself, okay? So if you like, we have a toolbox. Now, if you look at that toolbox and just think of it as a kind of a metaphor, okay? That toolbox has, it has easy access bits that you can pick up easily just from the top. Then you have to root around for other bits down further, a little bit harder to access. And if you like, it opens out in two ways, okay? And you'll see where I'm going with this. But really, our resilience and our coping skills, if we can think of them as a toolbox, we can dip in and out of, okay, as we need, and we can add to it and maybe sometimes subtract. Things that worked for us at one stage maybe doesn't work for us anymore. We can just throw that out, be rid of it. So we can adapt. So our toolbox, so what's in it? So resilience really is key in managing change, right? And we know that there are factors that promote resilience and therefore quality of life. And I've, if you like, a bit like the toolbox, I've opened it out and separated them a little bit artificially, right? They're part of the same toolbox, but just for ease of exploration, I've opened it out a little bit, okay? One of the first things that comes up in literature on resilience is about personality, and actually that's not particularly a helpful place to start. We are who we are, okay? There are people who are, I'd say, not, who don't suffer fools gladly, but you know what? You learn to rein it in over the years. There are people who get a bit anxious about things in life, and they've learned not to give in to that anxiety. So we can modify our personality, but we are who we are. So I'm going to focus on the ones where we can actually do a little bit more with. So I think about resilience in two ways. One is the kind of psychological, emotional, personal. It's me, it's who I am. And the other is then in terms of resources and supports. What is around me, what is available to me, okay? So a little bit artificial, but it's just a useful way to unpick it. So personal, okay? What is it for me, who I am, and what can I do? And I've sort of grouped just a few bits under three headings. Cognitive, my thinking, okay? Sometimes when we're under pressure, our thinking can sort of run on ahead of us in a way that's really not helpful. Or sometimes we find it hard to organise our thoughts when we're stressed and upset, okay? It can be difficult to manage our thoughts. So some of the things we need to think a little bit about are maybe reaching out for some sort of counselling support, cognitive behavioural therapy, helping us to organise our thoughts a little bit. Okay, maybe we need to think about that. Maybe we need to think a little bit about trying to balance our, in our thinking, a little bit about some positive thinking. Now that's fine to say, but actually, maybe we need to learn and develop the habit of looking back in our day and trying to pick out some of the positives to hold on to have a balance. I started this morning with a great sense of relief that I'm not Liz Truss. So I set out with quite a spring in my step, and there are people here who could teach Liz Truss a thing or two about getting her act together. So cognitive, or thinking. And there are things we can do. There are strategies, there are things available to us. Affective, or emotions. We can go through phases where we're sad, upset, worried, anxious, hopeful. All of those kind of feelings that can be generated by a diagnosis. And again, sometimes our thoughts and our feelings are kind of, they're connected. One can set off the other in either direction, positive or negative. So feelings, we need to think about what could we do to kind of manage our feelings. Do we need to think a little bit about a counselling support? Do we need to think about mindfulness? Do we need to think about other meditative practices to help us to just lower our stress, because our feelings are very much connected to our thinking. And we want to be able to engage with what is happening in our lives in a way that we can make meaningful decisions, good decisions, reasonable decisions. So we need to think about what's available to us in terms of our emotion and behavioural. By behavioural, I mean, what can I actually do? Do I need to think about a gentle exercise program? And Fiona has mentioned some of those. Do I need to think about yoga? Do I need to think about Pilates? Do I need to think about just a walk, just to be out in the air? What can I do? What action can I take? Okay, so I've divided those up. So that's that personal side of the toolbox. On the other side, then I'm thinking about resources. We know that one of the coping strategies for people who have a cancer diagnosis is information seeking. We do that in crisis as people. We look for information. Okay, what is this about? What is available to me? How do I access it? Information seeking, understanding. What are the consequences of this treatment? That, what would be the side effects? What am I likely to expect? So information seeking, emotional support, family and friends, neighbours often rally around, and more formal networks. So, for example, a breast cancer support group, right? That's an emotional support, okay, which can be very helpful. And if you've ever talked to somebody who is maybe experiencing the same sort of cancer diagnosis as yourself, you might remember having that kind of aha moment. I know exactly what she's talking about. Oh, that's it actually. Someone else can name something that's happening for you, okay? That aha moment. But we also know from the literature that engaging in a support group like that, not only helpful in terms of what we learn from others, and that sense of, it's not just me, actually other people are experiencing this too, which is helpful, and also we learn about other people's strategies, other people's way of managing. We also know that information sharing, and that kind of research comes from across a whole spectrum of situations about health and mental health and well-being, that actually we are hardwired as a species to be social. We need other people. It's a survival thing for us. So sharing our experience with others, giving of ourselves to others, we actually know is helpful. It is healthful, okay? And then practical help. I might be a very independent person, but actually maybe just now I need help. I need to ask somebody to give me a lift to radiotherapy. Maybe you need to seek some financial advice and support around what's happening. Maybe somebody might do the school collection for you, or might just help out in any practical way, okay? So we need, even though we might be independent and private people, sometimes we have to reach out. And in our networks, the reality is there are people we maybe might be a little bit disappointed in, and equally there are people who come forward and you think, wow, I didn't think, that I would be helped in that way. So don't be afraid to reach out, okay? So I'm going to go back into that more personal thing, and I'm going to pull out one little thing that I think is important, and that's self-efficacy. And by self-efficacy, I mean just some sort of mastery of your situation. There are things happening to you that you don't have a choice about. You would never have wished for this diagnosis, and there's not a lot you can do. You're actively engaging with services. You're here today, information seeking. But mastery, we need to have when some bits of our life are not within our control, we need to figure out and find things that we can have control in, okay? That's just important for us as people. There's a very nice piece of work, and it's very old actually, by a man called Kenneth Kalman. And he talked about quality of life, and he said really our quality of life is a function of our expectations. And what he meant by that is if our reality, our physical reality is here, right, and my goal, right, my sense of what would give me a good life is way, way up here, that's a big gap. And the bigger that gap, the more likely I am to actually be dissatisfied with my quality of life. Okay? So the gap, the bigger the gap, the more likely we are to feel dissatisfied. And I'm not saying give up your high goal, but actually today, if we think about, here's my reality today, this is what I can do in terms of my resources, my supports, pick a goal that's a little bit beyond, but is possibly achievable, and go for it. You're likely to achieve it, and you know the old saying, nothing achieves like success, okay? So set yourselves modest goals. I'm not saying lose the big one, but in the meantime, give yourself that daily experience of. So mastery is a little bit about what are my choices, setting reasonable goals, and having some sort of control. Okay? So back over to the other side of our toolkit, information and resources. What do I need? What's available to me? How can I access it? Don't be afraid of it. Go out there and find out what's there for you. Okay? And if you like, bringing those two strands together, my question that I started with and I was looking into is, what impacts the different aspects of our resilience? You know, so we have the personal stuff that's going on that we're trying to manage. We're thinking of supports and networks and our family and friends and the impact on them and the support they can offer us, the giving and taking. Actually, what we do know from the literature is that symptom distress, right, uncontrolled symptoms reverberate right across all your domains of coping. It just does, okay? You can, if you find yourself, you might find yourself refusing, we'll say, an invitation to lunch that you were really looking forward to. But if your gut is not reliable and you know that the loos in this cafe are upstairs, you can't. Do you know what I mean? You can't do that. So uncontrolled symptoms can reverberate right into that simple thing, right? If somebody asks you how you're feeling, and because they want to be supportive and give you a chance to offload, but really you're struggling hard not to throw up, you know, that's also not where you want to be. So symptom distress can reverberate right across all your domains of coping, okay? If you're very distressed and uncomfortable with pain, you're not going to sit and do yoga in a meaningful way, right? You'll be more thinking about running away, okay? So symptom distress, we know that can reverberate right across coping. So actively making choices, you know, there are formal and informal supports available to us all. Your GP is available to you, maybe the CNS in the clinic, the oncologist, radiation oncologist, ARC House, look at the services, what's available, and there's palliative care, okay? So I think that's all I have to say to you. So thank you for listening.